Hello, what's up, and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how I plan my trips. This can be for any trips. Lately, I've been doing a lot of backpacking trips. I'm going to share with you my methods, what I do before I travel, and just how I prepare and plan to have amazing travel experiences. I hope this video will help you not be so scared when you're planning your trip and hopefully encourage you to take that leap and maybe plan your first solo backpacking trip. The delicate balance, the balance between planning and also living in the moment. It's a hard balance. This is what works for me. For those of you who don't know, my name's Rachel. I make videos on fashion, travel, and environmentalism. So if you like any of those things, you should consider subscribing to me. If you're new to my channel, you might not know that I'm actually going backpacking in Central America in the new year. So I'm currently in the process of planning a trip, so I thought I'd make this video while it's fresh in my mind how to plan a trip. If you're thinking about backpacking Southeast Asia and that's something that interests you, I did Southeast Asia in early 2023 and I made videos on my packing process, vlogs while I was there, and also a breakdown of my Southeast Asia trip, cities, places I liked, budget, all of that jazz. So I will link my Southeast Asia playlist right here. If you're interested in backpacking Central America, keep an eye out for my content that's coming soon, as I'm about to leave on that trip very, very soon. I'll be posting photos and day-to-day funny moments on my Instagram. I'll be posting some shorts on YouTube. I'll be posting some TikToks on TikTok. So make sure you're subscribed to me on all these platforms if you want to follow along on my journey. It's just Roam with Rach. With all that being said, let's get into the video, how to plan a trip and how to plan an amazing trip at that. Okay, so the first thing you want to think about when you're going on a trip is obviously, where do you want to go? You want to think about multiple things when you're planning this. What kinds of activities do you like to do? What sort of weather are you looking for, right? And along with weather, think about what time of year you are going to be visiting that country. I backpack Southeast Asia, for example, January to April, because I know that that's part of their dry season. You also want to think about the price of each country and your budget. When I think about traveling through Europe, there are obviously some Eastern European countries that are a lot cheaper. Think like Czech Republic, where the beer is cheaper than water. And then there are more expensive countries, like a lot of the Scandinavian countries. They are pricey, and so you need to think about your budget when you're going to these places so that you're not only able to afford to pay for your accommodation and your flight, but you're also able to afford your day-to-day living expenses. There are going to be some places where the flight is going to be more expensive depending on where you are in the world, and then maybe when you're there it's cheaper, or vice versa. Think about these things, do your research. The way I do research is typically just like Google searching, backpacking certain countries, looking at certain travel blogs, looking at travel vlogs, just like ones I make. And these kind of give me an idea of what it's like in that country and the popular things to do there. Also, there are some super detailed travel blogs where they go over like just everything under the sun that you would need to know about a certain country, and I find them super, super helpful. So don't underestimate the blog. I feel like a lot of people write off blogging now, but like there are so many like intricate, detailed, amazing blogs out there, especially for travel and backpacking. So all this to say, do your research, figure out where you want to go. Once you've figured out where you want to go, you can then start thinking about vaccination. This is especially important if you're going on your trip relatively soon. You need to make sure that you have enough time to get vaccinated depending on which country you're going to. Obviously, if you're staying in your own country or a country that's close to you, you might not need any vaccines at all. But if you're going anywhere internationally that's new or foreign to you, make sure you book an appointment with a travel clinic, talk to your family doctor, and figure out what sort of vaccinations and potential medications that you might need. Certain places you might need malaria pills, and certain places you might need like what's the word I'm looking for? Antibacterial medication in case you get sick. Like, you need to think about those sorts of things. But yeah, I got my yellow fever vaccine today because I'm leaving on my trip pretty soon. I wanted to make sure that I have everything done, I have enough time. Some vaccines you need to take like weeks apart. Some vaccines you can't take with other vaccines. So you need to pre-plan this. I would say a couple months in advance. Make sure that you're getting all your vaccines and your medications in order. Along with that, make sure you have some bug spray. I get a good bug spray from my travel clinic, but you can get one anywhere. Just make sure that it has a certain percentage of whatever it's called to repel the bugs. So make sure you get vaccinated, get all your medications in order. This is not something you want to leave to the last minute. Okay, so now you've figured out where you want to go. You've got your vaccines in order. You've started that planning process. Now you need to think about your route and what is the best course of action for you to travel through whatever country you're going to. Things I like to think about is airports I'm flying into, what is the cheapest airport to fly into, maybe if you're trying to do things on a budget, but then you also have to think about the route. If you're doing a backpacking trip, maybe flying isn't always the cheapest option. Is there a way to take a bus? But if you're taking a bus or a train or other forms of transit internationally between countries, you also need to think about if it's safe. Some countries it's totally safe to cross the border in a bus or in some sort of ground transit. Other times it's not as safe. So again, this is where doing your research and checking out those blog posts are gonna really come in handy for you. So to figure out like which country and which airport I'm gonna fly into, I typically start with looking at a map. Now this might sound really obvious to some and really not to others, but I like to look at a map. Typically I start making like a little document online of my planning itinerary process. I like to use Google Docs because I can access it and edit to it and add my friends and family to it so they can see my plan. Use whatever works for you. For me, I like to put a map on the first page of my little itinerary so I can see like where the countries I'm going, what are the popular cities, and what makes the most sense travel-wise. I like to do that, get out a map, and then I like to go on Google Flights. And I like to go on Google Flights in a private browser because if you go in a public browser or your normal browser, Google Flights remembers what flights you're searching for and typically raises the price on them. So a private browser just kind of ensures a little bit more that you're not going to be overcharged for a flight. If you have a VPN, I've even heard of people switching their VPN to different countries to find cheaper flight tickets. I've only done this a handful of times and sometimes it is effective, so something to think about as well. If you're not too familiar with booking a lot of flights, Google Flights is a really good website because they take all the different flight patterns and they find you the best route for the cheapest price, all that stuff. Something else that's really good about Google Flights is that you can track when the prices are dropping, you can see the average prices, and you can kind of plan things out that way. Sometimes you might not know off the top of your head what is a good price for a plane ticket from here to Thailand. But when you're looking on Google Flights, you can kind of see, oh, prices are high right now. They might drop, or prices are low right now. This is a good time to buy. And the more time you have, obviously the more time you can kind of strategically wait and then purchase if you think the prices are going to drop. Like I mentioned, I like to make a Google Doc. And when I make a Google Doc, I like to plan out a lot of things before I purchase them. Now, this isn't to say I plan out my whole entire trip in detail and then buy everything, but I like to do sort of a breakdown like this. I like to make a little table, and on top of the table, I'll write the city that I'm going to, or the country and then the city. Then in the first row of the table, I might say the dates that I'm going to be there. Then underneath that, I would have 4 different sections of my table. In the first section, I write the accommodation, so where I'm staying. If it's a hostel, I typically put the address in there. I put how many beds the dorm is, or if it's mixed, or if it's an all-girl dorm. Put the name of the hostel, and then I put the price underneath, right? You put whatever you think will be useful for you and that you want to remember and reference at a quick glance. And then in the second tab next to it, I put things to do in the city. So this is obviously through the research that you've done, list off a bunch of different things that you want to do. Don't just write the most popular things to do, write things that you want to do. They might coincide sometimes and they might not, right? So I make a list of a bunch of things that I want to do in that city. That also kind of gives me an idea of how many days I want to be in there, and they all sort of go together. The good thing about having it in a Google Doc is you can go back, you can edit it, you can tweak it, and it gives you a good, clear outline picture. In the third box, I like to write budget-friendly things and different foods that I want to try and just information about that country or that city I'm going to that I think will be helpful. Like, don't drink the water here, make sure you brush your teeth with bottled water, I really want to try this cultural dish, and I think you need to spend about this much for a hostel, this much for, activities and day-to-day. Because giving yourself a budget will help you kind of plan out how much money you're going to need to take out in that local currency. Then in the fourth and final column, I like to write travel to the next place. In this column, I plan out how I'm going to travel to the next city or the next country that I'm going to. This layout is really effective for me because I like to plan at least my accommodation of where I'm going to be staying, and I like to plan my travel to the next place. This way, it's not something I have to worry about, and it's something I don't forget to do, because then I'm not last minute at a place and I don't know how I'm getting to my next city. Here's the thing, this doesn't always need to be booked in advance. Sometimes buses in certain countries are really easy to access. Sometimes if you're traveling a long distance, a train or a plane might need to be pre-booked. Something that I love about Hostel World, because I always stay in hostels when I'm backpacking, is that there is free cancellation on a lot of hostels. So you can just pay like a down payment of a certain percentage, and then if you need to cancel for any reason, you don't have to pay for everything all at once. You can kind of be a little bit more flexible with your dates as long as you cancel. Most of them are like 24 to 48 hours in advance. So maybe you're in a city and you're really enjoying it there and you want to stay. That's okay. Just make sure that you cancel your hostel, cancel your transportation if you can, or wait to book transportation for certain cities like that. If you're not in a time limit, you can kind of figure out like where certain places are that you can be a little bit more flexible. If you're in a place where transit is hard to come by and you need to pre-book, then you'll learn all that through research and you'll be able to pre-book. Also, something you can do on Google Docs to make things easy to access is make different headings. I'll put a little video on the screen so I can show you how to make different headings, but that just leaves you with a nice like table of contents almost on the side where you can click each city, and when you're traveling and accessing it on your phone, this makes it super easy so you're not scrolling through all the cities you've already been to. Another good way, of course I've mentioned before, to know how long you want to stay in a certain city or a certain place is to check out blogs. A lot of blogs and vlogs will say, you know, we were here for this many days, we felt like it was too short. We were here for this many days, we felt like it was too long. And if you watched any video of mine before, you probably know what I'm gonna say next, but that is to think about every week how many buffer days you're gonna need. Some people only need a buffer day maybe once every 2 weeks or once every week. Think about what's important for you and how many days you think you're gonna need to just relax and rest. If you're jumping from city to city quickly, it might be good to build in a buffer day in a city that's hopefully a little safer and that you can kind of station yourself in for an extra day or so. This gives you time to like do laundry, recoup, relax, chill, maybe continue planning out some things for the rest of your trip as you go, right? You need to give yourself buffer days or else you're gonna hate your life and hate your trip. Like I mentioned before, basically what I like to pre-book is accommodations and transportation to the next place. This obviously depending on the ease at which to book both of those. Along with that, you need to look at popular tourist attractions and see if those are something that you need to pre-book. On my next trip, I'm planning to hike a certain volcano, and that hike needs to be pre-booked because it does fill up. So that's something that I've already booked and planned out in my itinerary so that I don't have to worry about it when I'm there and I'm not scrambling. Europe this past summer, there were some like popular tourist attractions in Spain that you also needed to pre-book to make sure that you weren't scrambling at the last minute. So I would say the 3 things that you definitely need to book are accommodations, sometimes transportation to and from each city, or at least have an idea. If you don't book, just be like, a bus is 3 hours from this place to this place. Link the website where you can book it. Then you still have flexibility, but you know in your brain already how you're gonna get from point A to point B. And then the 3rd thing, some popular tourist attractions. Those are 3 things that I book in advance. The rest I kind of leave up to chance and how I'm feeling each day and the people I meet. This way I can wake up, you know, make some friends at my hostel. I have a list of things I want to do, and you know, maybe I go up to someone and say, hey, what are you up to today? This is what I was thinking about doing, right? Some people don't plan anything at all, so having some sort of an idea maybe will help you make some friends. Some people also might be wanting to do the same things as you, and that's a really easy way to make friends at a hostel. So I like to have a list of things that I want to do, and then not necessarily a specific date for each thing unless it's a popular tourist attraction. All right, once I've planned most of that and, you know, given myself an idea of my route and how I'm getting from point A to point B and where I'm staying and a little bit of an idea, rough idea of what I'm doing, I like to check out visas. Now, again, you can check out visas just like you can check out vaccines on most government websites, either your government or the government you're going to. You can make sure that you're applying ahead of time for these things so that you don't run out of time. You can make sure if you can get it on arrival or if you need to get pre-approved, right? Sometimes there's a lot of paperwork you need to go through. So I like to check out visas and different documents that I need. I was just at the travel clinic today, like I mentioned before, getting my yellow fever. Yellow fever, some countries like to see documentation of your yellow fever vaccination. So my travel clinic nurse kind of let me know, hey, make sure that you travel with this, right? That's a document that is needed. The next thing that I would do after I've checked out my visas and documents that I need is to make sure that I have the proper amount of currency. Now, this is different for every person how you like to travel. Some people like to take out all the money that they think they're going to need for a certain country and then hide it in different areas of their bag. Obviously, that's a bit more risky. Some people like to take out a decent chunk of money and then make sure that they can find ATMs. The only risk with doing something like this is you need to make sure in more remote places that you actually have access to an ATM. You also need to think about the different countries you're going to, whether they're more developed or less developed. Typically less developed places, you need to make sure you have cash on you at all points in time. More developed places, you might be able to get away with using your credit card a lot of the time. Checking currency and thinking about a budget in relation to what you've done your research on, and planning out how much you want to bring a day. Some people say that you should bring half the stuff and double the amount of money, since you can always buy something when you're there. That works for some countries better than others, but just making sure that you have enough that you're gonna be okay and you're going to be able to take care of yourself, especially if you're solo, right? After I've done all of that, I'm kind of near the end of my planning process, and at this point in time, I like to check the government warnings. This might be something you want to do earlier. Obviously, if you're reading a lot of blogs and people are talking about a certain place that they like to go to, they might mention the crime rate already. You might already have an idea of the crime rate before you book. This could be at any stage of your journey. For me, I like to read some blog posts, get a gauge of the safety, and then before I'm leaving for my trip, actually read like government notices from my government's website about like health warnings, safety precautions to take, whether that place is really well known for like earthquakes or tsunamis, like what do you do for safety, right? Different things for different countries and different natural disasters. I also like to think about the crimes that are really popular potentially in that place. Like in Europe, pickpocketing is really well known, so making sure that you're holding things really close to you. Honestly, a lot of places pickpocketing is a big one. And just thinking about certain safety precautions that you can take with the knowledge of the different hazards that you could come in contact with. I also like to make sure that I know like the telephone number for emergencies, so every place is different. In Canada, it's 911. Different countries have different emergency numbers, so making sure that you're knowledgeable about that. I would write this in that like third column box of my planning sheet, just so I know for each place I'm going to. And then after you've done all of that, you've booked most of your stuff, everything's planned and outlined, this would be the time to think about the clothes that you're going to be wearing, the shoes you're going to be wearing, and what you're going to pack, what you're going to need. Certain day bags and other materials like a snorkel. Think about things that you want to pack. If you're at a loss for packing and you're going to some places that I've already been to, I will link my packing playlist here where I've made a couple different packing videos so far. I'll also be making a packing video for my Central America trip, so stay tuned for that. All right, that was quite the mouthful, but I hope that this was helpful for you and I gave you some good tips and strategies for how to plan your next amazing trip. If you have any questions about the planning process or about how I do things, please leave me a comment down below or even leave me a comment to say hello. I try to reply to all my comments. Make sure that you're subscribed and you're following along with me on my different platforms if you like travel, fashion, or environmentalism. That's all for this video, and I'll see you next week. Bye!
I got so much back, I think I'm never running out, yeah. Bust me down a whip, bitch, I don't do this for no clout, hey. I got so much back.